Yo, welcome brothers and sisters to the Vampire Coast faction guide. So a few days before the Vampire Coast arrived, and this is a fantastic faction. I really love it and I feel really positive about this faction over here, and I think it's really time to do a Vampire Coast faction guide. Even if everything is quite new and we have lots of stuff to learn, I am really able to provide you guys a really good faction guide with a lot of information in it as always. And I hope you like it. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Give me a thumb up, and yeah, let's begin with the strengths and the weaknesses as always. After that, we'll take a closer look on each unit of the complete roster, the infantry, the monsters, the missile infantry and all that stuff. And after that, I'm going to show you some competitive builds, and then we do a summary. So let's begin. So let's talk about the strength and the weaknesses. And I couldn't really find many points, because I always will give you just outstanding points in my faction guides, what is really unique with this faction. And if we start with the pros, I can clearly find 3 quite outstanding points or quite unique characteristics. First of all, we have the heavy firing power. So we have a very good artillery, we have very good missile infantry units, and we have a lot of them. So the firing power is very, very good. And in one league, you can say, with the Empire, with the Skaven, with the Dawi, maybe I wouldn't say the best, but maybe they are the best. Maybe it is like this. But very outstanding is that the whole army is really have a focus point on the shooting units. So the infantry is not really a big deal in this faction over here. It's more the missile infantry. So you're probably creating builds around the missile infantry. So you don't pick a base infantry setup or something like that. You are going to pick your units around your shooting units. So this is probably the only faction in the game that the missile infantry is more important than the infantry. But in either way, it's a really unique characteristic over here. A really good point is, but not really unique, that the Vampire Coast have a good amount of different anti-infantry monsters. So we have I would say quite a weakness in the infantry itself. And therefore it's quite good to compensate this weakness with all these monsters that are really designed to do a tremendous amount of damage to infantry groups with a lot of splash damage, also AP damage and so on. And for this reason we have a very, very good lineup with different anti-infantry monsters over here on the Vampire Coast army roster. What is also quite unique and definitely an advantage are the missile monsters. So we have zombies riding some monsters in groups and shooting on your opponent. And this is also quite unique, quite a unique type of unit, I would say. Another really important characteristic is, of course, that the Vampire Coast units also crumble instead of routing, like the Tomb Kings or the Vampire Counts. And as I said in my Vampire Count faction guide, this can either be an advantage or a disadvantage. The dark side of crumbling is that the undead units typically have an average much lower leadership, because they typically stay longer in fight. And therefore the leadership is in average much lower than from routing units. But even though in this case on the Vampire Coast I would definitely say crumbling is a huge advantage with all these crap infantry units, all these low-tier zombies, it is much better if these guys crumble instead of routing, because your whole front line would be collapsed almost immediately in a fight if the Vampire Coast units would rout. So your front line is for a longer time much steadier, even with such crap units like zombies. The last advantage, or let me say the last point I found for the pros, is also well known. All Vampire Coast units causing fear, like the Vampire Counts for example, and this is of course a big advantage. You can bring much easier enemy units to rout, and this is of course a big advantage because you can disrupt the enemy formation in the battle, in the front line and stuff like that, and this is of course a big advantage over here. But where is light, there is shadow, so let's talk about the cons. So first of all, and very outstanding in my opinion, is the fact that we have a very weak infantry in summary. Of course we have the Depth Guard as a quite elite unit, but overall is the infantry quite weak, and also the variation is not really big. We have a very tiny variation out of different units, and this is combined, this is a very weak infantry with all these crab zombies. They are just a meat shield for other arms of services, you can say. So in this case we have, as the only faction in the game, I would say, a faction that has the infantry just as a meat shield or to support other arms of service, and they are not meant to be as a foundation of their army. So the infantry is not the foundation in this case, just a supporting unit for other arms. The next disadvantage is, or it isn't really a disadvantage, but you can say we have just 3 magical laws available. So the Vampire Coast don't have access to many magical laws. We have just the Law of Deep, the Law of Vampires, and the Law of Death. So, but therefore we have quite competitive ones. The Law of Deep is really good in my opinion, and all of you know the Law of Death and the Law of Vampires are also quite competitive laws. So nothing more to say about this over here. We have 3 really competitive magical laws available, even if the Vampire Coast don't have access to other ones. I think this is quite a competitive combination of magical laws and enough. I'm really aware of the ability of the Vampire Coast to handle it against large entities. We have good amount of, or very good artillery units, good missile infantry units that cause armor-piercing missile damage, and we have also a Terrorgeist, no anti-large Terrorgeist, but a Terrorgeist with a good amount of AP damage, and also Araness Assault Spire anti-large Lord, and also we have Count Noctilus, he's also anti-large Lord. But even though I miss a little bit a anti-large monster, we don't have any real anti-large monster, and this can be in some cases a little disadvantage in a frontline fight if your artillery is not able to get in fight because of the terrain, or your missile infantry. Then it would be in some cases quite nice to have an anti-large monster, a real anti-large monster. But as I said, it's not really a big disadvantage because we have much other tools to handle it against large entities. Quite an outstanding point is the fact that we don't have any cavalry available. For example, the Vampire Counts have a cavalry, and even the Tomb Kings, even if the Tomb King cavalry is not really good, but for mobility purposes there is one, and this is the point. Without a cavalry you get lesser tools for mobility purposes. Of course you don't always have to have a cavalry for competing against other cavalry units or large entities. It don't has to be like this, but at least a low tier cavalry unit for doing some rear charges, fighting off some low tier infantry units of your opponent, protecting yourself from chariots, forcing off some surrounding units, or cleaning up some missile infantry. For all these purposes I miss at least a low tier cavalry unit. There's not one single unit available, and this is a big disadvantage in my opinion. Even if it's worth to be mentioned that we have for this purposes, or in this case, the jack droppers for example, and the Falbats. They give us a little bit of mobility and can also forcing off routing units and stuff like that. So we have a small compensation for this. There are some small unique characteristics you can say available. For example, the artillery has this extra powder ability that will give you plus 30% more armor-piercing missile damage, armor-piercing explosion damage, and more splash damage, you can say. And this will get disabled if the ammunition drops under 80%. Other quite small or tiny point is that these guys are aquatic, at least the infantry units or the zombies. That means other small units struggle to fight in water terrain, and these guys excel. So these guys performing quite steady, and this is of course an advantage in a fight where other units of your opponent get a malus. Worth to be mentioned is also, as the last point, that we have quite good and competitive lords available. We have 4 legendary lords, and all are quite competitive in my opinion, and this is also worth to be mentioned over here. But that's it. That are all my points on the vampire counts, all the outstanding pros and cons. So let's continue now with the lords. Then after that we take a closer look on the heroes and so on. So let's begin with the lords and we are starting with Aranessa's Soul Spite. And this lady over here is a big surprise for me. Probably the most competitive pick on the roster, and I will explain you why. First of all, she's quite cheap. You pay about 1,500 credits for her. And then she is really anti-large monsters. She has a anti-large bonus of 35, what is really good. The AP armor piercing damage is 280, what is also quite good. Of course, the weapon strength with overall 400 is not the highest, but therefore the melee stats are superior. We have a melee attack of 60 and a melee defense of 60. So this is, for example, in one league like Tyrion and stuff like that, this is really superior. And therefore, of course, we don't have any armor, so the amount of armor is just 20. You can forget this, but in some cases it's not really bad. So for example, you fight against Kolic, and Kolic is a huge anti-large monster with a lot of AP damage, but all his AP damage don't help him, because Aranessa is not armored. And for this reason, you will see in some fights, you will notice it by yourself, that Aranessa is a tumbler, you can say. She always fly around from when she get hit by a large monster, then she will stand up and fight again. But she will not take that much damage, so it's very difficult for large entities to damage her, because she's not so well armored, or she has no armor, but she has a huge melee defense. With also some good abilities, for example, Spearfisher's Net, that will net one opponent, one unit, and this unit cannot move, same like the Net of Amimtok. And this will reduce the melee defense also by 27, so this is a superior ability to hold tight large entities like Kolic or monsters and stuff like that. She's really designed for battle against large entities. She's a melee expert, a really superior melee expert. And we have also some other abilities, for example Hornswaggle, that will reduce the melee defense by 27, the ammo by 30, and the speed by 24%, for example. Then Mana and Slug, that will give Aranessa an additional bonus of melee defense by 27 and a damage resistance by 22%. So a lot of stuff here also in the small selection of abilities, so I can really recommend to pick her. She's one of the fewer options to compete against large entities on the roster when it comes to melee fight, and for this reason this is really a very good lord and very competitive pick in my opinion. Worth to be mentioned is that she is able to sit on a Rotting Promethean. That will increase the hit points by about 700, what is quite a lot. She is then very heavily armored with an amount of 120, but therefore the melee attack will decrease. So we have just 50 then, so minus 10. In the most cases I would prefer to bring her on foot, because it's much more difficult to kill her. As I said, make your own tests. It's very difficult for large entities to kill her. Just a side note, Aranessa's Soul Spite has a physical resistance of 20%. This is one of the reasons why it's so difficult to kill her. And she is immune to psychology, perfect for fighting large monsters. and yeah, nothing more to say about her. So let's talk about Luther Harkin. And Luther Harkin is a duelist and a very good one. So it means that he's designed to fight other single entities like lords, heroes, probably on foot. And also he can of course fight in enemy ranks of infantry, all that stuff. And he's a very good duelist, so we have a weapon strength of 480, nearly 500, what is quite a lot. Therefore the AP damage is not the highest, we have just 170, what is okay. But he has also a gun, so he can fire whilst moving, and with every shot he causing AP missile damage of 120, what is quite good. And also he has an ability called Disrupted. Every time he will hit an opponent in melee combat, or if he shoot on him, this will trigger, and this will cause plus 50% miscast chance and minus 10% physical resistance to the opponent for 10 seconds. The price overall is quite decent, and he is able to sit on a Deathshriek Terrorgeist. Without a Terrorgeist with some abilities enabled, the price is about 1,500 credits. With the Terrorgeist it is nearly 3,000. Of course the extra charge for the Terrorgeist is 1,300 credits, and we have a Deathshriek Terrorgeist over here. That means it is not a anti-large monster, but we have a very good amount of AP damage. So Luther's AP damage on a Deathshriek Terrorgeist is then 325, what is quite a lot. But of course there are also dark sides. For example, he's then not a duelist anymore. On the Deathshriek Terrorgeist, because the melee attack will reduce by a lot, by 26, the melee defense will reduce by 8, and also the weapon strength overall will reduce by 20. Therefore he will gain plus about 3,000 hit points, and this is quite a lot. And also he's able to shoot on the Terrorgeist whilst moving, what is also quite a cool feature. So he will shoot if he sits on the Terrorgeist. He's also able to activate some quite decent abilities, nothing special, but they are really okay. For example, we have Magical Void over here, what is quite unique, so that will increase the magic resistance by 33%, what is quite a lot. So should you bring Luther Harkin on foot or on a Deathshriek Terrorgeist? You cannot clearly answer that. It depends. In some cases it's good to have some aerial threat, and also if you would like to pick up some, or if you like to have some more pressure against ground monsters and stuff like that, the Terrorgeist with Luther Harkin on it is really good. But in some cases also he's a really superior duelist on foot, on the ground, and for this reason in some cases it's also good to bring him just on foot. Just a side note, Luther Harkin has also the activated ability Extra Powder, and he has a missile resistance of 15%. So let's talk about Celostra Derefin. She's a mighty spellcaster equipped with the Law of Deep. The Law of Deep for itself is a very competitive law. We have very good spells over here. We have, for example, Tide Call, that will call the tide or call a giant wave that disrupt enemy formations and causing damage, and the price is only 5 winds of magic per cast. Then we have Denizens of the Deep, that will summon a unit of Rotten Prometheans. Then we have Fog of the Damned, that will reduce the leadership and the melee attack. And we have Vangeist's Revenge, casting this huge massive ghost chip that causing a tremendous amount of damage to all units within the shooting range. And then Kraken's Pull is also not bad, that will reduce the speed by 48%. So we have very good magical lore, very competitive, probably in my opinion one of the best actually in the game. Celostra is able to sit on a rotting Leviathan. And this monster over here, the extra charge is 1,400 credits, but then she is really really able to fight in melee combat and causing a tremendous amount of damage. Otherwise she's just a spellcaster on foot. She is ethereal on foot, but She is not designed then to fight in melee combat, but on the Leviathan it is possible. Then she has also a huge amount of hit points, of course, and all that advantages from the Leviathan. She has one really unique ability called Ghosts of the Past that will summon a unit of Damn Knights Errant. This is quite unique and in some cases really useful. As I said, it's an ability, you don't need any Winds of Magic for that. You can cast it only once, this is the problem. But then you have a unit of Damn Knights Errant and they can charge in the back of your opponent's infantry and stuff like that. And for this reason, this is quite good. Celestra on Daraphan on the Leviathan is quite expensive. We have a price about 3,000 credits. So this is not really cheap, but even though I say she is really a competitive pick, she on the Leviathan and with this mighty book of spells of the Law of Deep, she is really a competitive pick and worth to bring if you have 3,000 credits left. Worth to be mentioned is also that she has a physical resistance of 10%. So let's talk about the non-legendary lords, and we have 6 different models available, 3 polearm versions and 3 pistol versions, and each version has access to one of the 3 magical lords, the Law of Death, the Law of Vampires and the Law of Deep. The Vampire Fleet Admiral, for example, with as a polearm version, is quite decent, has a weapon strength of 400, a bonus versus large of 25, what is quite good, and amount of AP damage of 280. We have a quite good melee defense of 60, and the amount of armor is okay with 7. And all models have the same abilities, so there are no difference in the abilities. We have on each model the same abilities, and each model is able to sit on a rotting Promethean for 300 credits extra charge. So nothing special over here, everything quite standard. The price is about 1,800 credits. It depends how many spells you enable, but the option to have a non-legendary lord for this price is quite decent, even if I would always prefer one of the 4 really superior legendary lords. So let's talk about Count Noctilus. And Count Noctilus is a mighty hybrid unit. He's a spellcaster and a melee expert, and he is anti-large. So we have a anti-large bonus of 20, what is not the highest, but it's okay. And the amount of AP damage is 300. And we have a charge defense against large. Besides from that, he has also good melee stats. The melee attack is 45, what is good, but the melee defense with 60 is really good. And he is very, very well armored, so we have an amount of armor of 110. He can cast spells out of 3 different laws, the Law of Deep, the Vampire Magical Law, and the Law of Shadows. For example, we have 1 spell available out of the Law of Deep, Drowned Dead. Then we have 2 spells out of the Vampire Spellbook, the Invocation of Nehek and the Wind of Death. And then we have 3 spells out of the Law of Shadows, Pit of Shades, the Withering, and Malkov's Mystifying Miasma. He has 2 quite unique abilities. One is Wraith Storm, that causing a good amount of damage to a single entity. You can also cast it on multiple entities, but the best way is to use it on a single entity. It's a bombardment and it causing a quite good amount of damage. And we have Captain's Wrath Mundial that will cast or summon a unit of zombie pirates. Very interesting is the fact that you can sit Count Noctilus on a Necrophax Colossus for 700 credits extra charge. If you sit him on a Necrophax Colossus, he will gain much more hit points, about 3,000. Therefore, the amount of armor will reduce dramatically, minus 35, and also the melee stats, of course. But on the Necrophax Colossus, you have also the ability to fire whilst moving then, and you cause a tremendous amount of missile damage. For example, we have a missile damage of 630, and this is quite a lot of stuff. The amount of AP damage is 137. So in some cases it's worth to bring in on a Necrophax Colossus because the price is quite decent, or the extra charge, but in some cases it's put him on foot because also on foot he's a quite quite a good duelist. He's a quite good melee expert, especially when it comes to fights against large entities. Also worth to be mentioned is that Count Noctilos has a missile resistance of 15%. He's, in my opinion, a competitive lord, even if he is the most expensive on the roster, but in some cases it's really worth to bring him, especially in my opinion on the Necrophax Colossus. So let's continue with the heroes, and let's start with the Gunnery Wight. And the Gunnery Wight is in the same league or the same unit type like the Master Engineer from the Dawi or the Warlock Engineer from the Skaven. He's a supporting unit, especially for your artillery and ranged units overall, so also for your missile infantry. He has several abilities available, activated abilities, to increase the accuracy of your artillery, for example, or the splash damage. So let's take a short look on the abilities. For example, we have Dead Eyes that will increase the AP missile damage by 10% and the missile damage overall by 10%. The other good ability is Enchanted Ballistics that will increase the accuracy by 60%, and this is a lot of stuff over here. And the reload skills by 20. This will last 25 seconds, but you can do it all the time. There is no gap or something like that, so after I think 1 minute or 90 seconds you can use it again. So this is quite a good ability, especially in the beginning. And as I said, if you spend a lot of money in your artillery, in some cases it's really worth, in my opinion, to bring the Gunnery Wight. Most players would probably say that he is not a competitive pick, but as I said, if you brought 2 Carronades to the battlefield or also 1 Queen Bess, and you will increase the accuracy by 60%, this is a lot of stuff, especially in the beginning with the extra powder ability. But I said in the beginning, all artillery units have the extra powder ability until the ammunition drops under 80%. That will increase the armor piercing, missile damage, and so on. And this is quite a lot of stuff, especially in combination with the Enchanted Ballistics ability from the Gunnery Wight. The Gunnery Wight itself has also causing also a good amount of missile damage, 334, and the AP missile damage is 180, but that is not so important. He is better to stay in the artillery, in artillery group, or in also maybe for your missile infantry to increase the accuracy there, to increase the damage output there, and for this reason he's much better. He has a missile resistance of 15%, and as I said, he's not really cheap. The price with some abilities enabled is about 1000 credits. That is a lot of stuff in addition with artillery units or missile infantry units, but in some cases, in my opinion, he's really worth to bring to the battlefield. Even if he is in melee combat or something like that, you can forget this completely. It's just to support your ranged units. What is quite outstanding is his own missile range, so he can shoot very long way. So we have a missile range of 118. This is quite a lot of stuff. So in some cases it's possible, even if he stays with the artillery, to shoot on the front line. This is also quite interesting. And this ballistics expert has also a quite good ability, another one called More Powder, that will replenish the ammunition, and this is very interesting in combination with Queen Bess. Queen Bess runs very fast out of ammunition and he can refill the ammunition. So as I said, I made several tests with this ballistic expert. I can really say it's in some cases really worth to bring him, because he's quite competitive in some combinations, especially with Queen Bess or 2 Carronades and stuff like that. So we have overall a very tiny hero selection. You can also count this as a disadvantage. So we have the most important hero over here, Mongol Hunter, and this thing, I mean, give me a break, I'm a grown man, but this thing looks horrific. And this is the most important hero, because this is the melee expert, or this is the melee monster, you can say. And it's in combat very very difficult to catch him. He has some very unique fighting animations like the Tomb Scorpion, so it's very difficult for units that are designed to snipe out enemy heroes and monsters to kill him. This is a huge advantage for the Morgul Hunter, so it's not so easy to snipe out. He's an anti-infantry monster with causing a lot of AP damage. So we have a weapon strength overall of 420, and this is a lot of stuff for a hero. Then we have an amount of AP damage of 280, what is also huge, and in addition a bonus versus infantry of 25, so superior stats. Therefore we have a quite low amount of armor with 50, and also the melee defense is very, very low with 38. This is not really much for a hero. The melee attack with 50 is good. Probably one of the most important points over here is that this thing over here is able to get deployed in a vanguard position and has stalk, so you can deploy him all over the map in a vanguard position, and then he is hidden anywhere. And this is quite a horrific combination, I would say, and really pretty good. He has a missile resistance of 30%, also quite interesting. It's not so easy to snipe him out with enemy missile infantry and stuff like that. And he has a chilling aura that will reduce the speed of nearby enemies by 36%. And this is constantly. You don't have to pay for this ability. This is an activated ability. He has the hunger that will replenish hit points of combatants. And yeah, nothing more to say about this thing over here. If you fight against infantry, massive groups of infantry, this is your hero. And in the most builds you will probably find him because he's performing really superior against other infantry units. But he's also not a anti-large monster, so against other large entities and also small heroes, he's not designed to fight them. He's really designed to fight other infantry groups. One very important point worth to be mentioned is that he is very expensive. So the price, even if you disable Deadly Onslaught and Foe Seeker, the price is still 1,450 credits, and this is a lot of stuff. That makes him more expensive than a Gorbel, for example. So I'm not sure how the metagame goes in this way, and maybe the most player will not bring him to the battlefield like the Green Knight or something like that because of the price. But besides from that, the performance is really good against infantry units. So there are 3 different spellcaster heroes available: Vampire Fleet Captain with the Law of Vampires, the Law of Death, and the Law of Deep. Nothing more to say about these beautiful ladies over here. And they are able to sit on the rotting Promethean. And in this case the extra charge is 400, so a little bit more than on the Vampire Fleet Admirals, but even though it's okay in some cases, for example if you pick Luther Harkin, it's quite okay to bring a additional spellcaster to the battlefield. In this case you can pick your magical law over here. So let's come to the infantry, and let's start with the zombie pirate Deckhands mob. And these guys are much better than the normal zombies, for example from the vampire counts. But for this reason they are also much more expensive, so nearly the double. We have a price of 300 credits. We have a weapon strength of 29. This is not so bad. So 29 is okay for some stupid zombies. And of course the amount of AP damage is 7. This is quite useless. Melee attack, melee defense completely useless. Also the armor, these guys are a meat shield, and in some cases you can fill up your army infantry roster to have at least a good amount of infantry units on the battlefield. But even though, don't expect any wonders, these guys are a meat shield, nothing more. So let's come to the polearm version, and the polearm version is in my opinion really cost efficient. So the price overall is 400. That means 100 more than the normal zombie pirate deckhand mob, but we have the better unit over here, definitely. So these guys are anti-large, so we have an anti-large bonus of 13, what is quite good for a unit for that price. The amount of AP damage is 19, what is really good. I mean, this is a unit for 400 credits and you get an amount of AP damage of 19. This is really good. And some might say that this is just the anti-large version and the normal zombie pirate deckhand mob is a version to fight against all the other infantry units, and every unit has its own strength. No, in this case you can definitely say the polearm version is preferable and clearly the better version, no matter who you're facing up against. Because the difference in the stats from the zombie pirate deckhand mob to the stats of the polearm version is not much. So we have a reduced weapon strength by -2, a little bit less melee attack by -3, but therefore we have a melee defense of +5, the anti-large bonus, and a much higher amount of AP damage. So this is the much better version in every case, even to fight against other infantry units. They are able to stay and fight, they are able to hold the line against large entities, and as I said, always preferable. So try always to save 100 bucks extra charge for these guys over here. It's definitely worth it. So let's come to the Tide of Skjold, these legendary or regiment of renown of the zombie pirate deckhand mobs. And if you compare the stats of the zombie pirate deckhand mobs against these guys, we can see these guys have more leadership, a little bit more melee attack, melee defense, but everything completely, don't have to talk about this. But we have two abilities. One is Rowdy, that will this unit will get constantly a +4 leadership and has always perfect vigor, so never gets tired and stuff like that. And Frenzy, so also constantly +12% weapon damage, +8% charge bonus, +8 melee attack, and immune to psychology. But in summary, you can leave out these guys over here completely, because the price is 450 credits and the difference to the normal zombies is not really much. So let's come to the Tsarines, and the Tsarines are in my opinion a really important unit because these ladies causing armor piercing damage, and we have an amount of 23, what is quite good. These ladies are ethereal, so they don't have any armor, but therefore they will ignore the most physical damage, with a physical resistance of 75%. Also, these ladies causing terror, not only fear, what is quite interesting. The amount of melee attack and melee defense is not the highest. We have a melee attack of 23, what is quite low. I think this is the only big disadvantage over here. The melee defense is 32, it's okay. They have a quite unique ability, Charmed, that will reduce the melee attack of your opponent by -9 when the Sirens hit your opponent in melee combat. And also the Sirens causing magical attacks. So quite interesting stuff, and the Sirens are a mid-range infantry unit, so you can deploy them for 850 credits, and for this I think this is a quite important, quite good unit for that price. Cost efficient. As I said, the only problem is a little bit the melee attack. 23 is not really much, but therefore they are ethereal, they have Charmed, this ability that will reduce the melee attack of your opponent and causing a good amount of AP damage. And as I already said, these ladies causing terror, and if terror units are always nice, if terror kicks in, terror routing is always good to break up spots in the front line. And as I said, this is a infantry unit that's causing terror, and this is always quite nice. So in summary, I would really say these ladies are cost efficient, this is a quite decent unit. I like the Sirens. So let's come to the more elite stuff, or to the elite units, and let's begin with the normal version of the Death Guard. And these guys are a Berserker Axe infantry, so, as you can say, the double Axe X version. They are quite well armored with an amount of 90. They are anti-infantry unit, even if they don't have an anti-infantry bonus. That means they have a good damage output and a good weapon strength. The weapon strength overall is 64. Therefore, the amount of AP damage is quite low. We have just 18. This is not an AP unit, so they will not performing well against very heavily armored units. The melee defense is 31. It's also not the best. You don't have to forget these guys have 2 axes in their hands, so that means they don't have any shield and something like that. The melee defense is just 31. Therefore, we have a very good melee attack of 49. So this means this is a damage dealer unit, you can definitely say. The leadership is 60. It's okay. typically low for Vampire Coast units, and as I already said, the amount of armor is good. But overall, not much more to talk about these guys. We have two special abilities, or two abilities, they're not really special. We have Frenzy, constantly increase the weapon damage by 12%, the charge bonus by 8%, the melee attack by 8%, and they are immune to psychology. And they have the hunger that will replenish the hit points. Of course, these guys are vampires. But overall, these guys are very expensive damage dealer unit. Of course, an elite damage dealer unit. The price is 1,200 credits. But if you compare these guys to other units, for example, Chosen, in the same price range, of course, Chosen are shielded, but they will lose clearly. So they are, I wouldn't say they are really cost efficient, but in most cases, you don't have better tools. So if you need a damage dealer unit on the roster or in infantry, if you're facing up against low tier faction or low tier units, infantry units, or not so heavily armored units, this is your only tool. So in some cases, it's really worth to stock up your army with 1 or 2 groups of this Death Guard over here. Because they really slice and dice low tier or mid-range infantry units, which are not so heavily armored, very fast because of their high damage output. And in this case, they really pay off then. So let's talk about the Death Guard with pole arms, and this is the more elite version, I would say. These guys causing AP damage 28. It's not the highest, but it's really okay. But they have a bonus versus large of 30, and this is a lot of stuff. The weapon strength overall is okay with 40. We have a good melee defense with 44, and they have a quite good amount of armor also with 90. They have also the same two abilities, Frenzy and the Hunger. But overall, you can simply say this is the anti-large version. These guys are designed to fight large entities. Generally spoken, a huge problem on the Death Guard is that they have a very few model count. They have just 45 models. This is a very low amount. For example, the Chosen have 60. So 45, you will see this also if you take them on the battlefield. You will see it's just a few models. So in some cases, if you're facing up a lot of large entities, against the Tomb Kings, for example, probably going to face up against a lot of large entities, then 1 or 2 groups of the Death Guard with pole arms are a really good pick. As I said, especially against large targets, because they're not performing very well against other high tier infantry units. The stats are not the best. They have a good melee defense, but the melee attack on something, it's a defense unit. So just against large targets, the performance is good. And then I made several tests. The performance is really superior. The big problem is that the Death Guard is not really on the same level like the Phoenix Guard or the Black Guard of Nagorod. There are a small step behind that, and there are several reasons. First of all, the stats on the Phoenix Guard, for example, is on most points much better. Not much better, but better. But the most important point are the hit points. We have just 45 models over here, and that also means we have just probably 30% lesser hit points than on other elite anti-large units. And you will notice that also in-game in some formations in some fights, the lesser model count. But even though the performance is still superior and very good against large entities. All Death Guard polearm versions have of course a charge defense against large. There's also a Regiment of Renown version available, the Bloody Reaver Deck Guard, and these guys have more melee defense plus 10, what is quite good, more melee attack plus 7, and a higher leadership. But they have a really important or really unique characteristic here. If it comes to the abilities, they have a activated ability, or you have to activate this ability called Enrage, that will give them a plus 44% damage resistance for 22 seconds. But besides from that, nothing more. The extra charge is 300 credits, so we have overall a price of 1,600 credits. This is a lot of stuff, and just in some cases, if you're facing up against like a lot of large entities, in some cases it's worth to bring them, but in others it's very expensive. But I mean, give me a break. We have this elite vampire unit. They are looking superior. They are looking so beautiful. In my opinion, one of the most beautiful looking infantry units of the complete game. So that was everything from the infantry. We have a quite small selection, as I already mentioned. The infantry has more the purpose to defend other arms of service. And yeah, so let's come to the missile infantry over here. So let's start with the zombie pirate gunnery mob, and the stats of the gunnery mob is much worse than the stats of the deckhand mob, and that means something. So we have nearly no weapon strength in melee combat. It's completely garbage. But of course these guys can shoot, but even though the missile damage is also very low with 15, the AP missile damage is 2, there's nearly no missile damage there. Of course these guys have extra powder, but overall we have just one positive thing: these guys can fire whilst moving. But as I said, this is complete garbage over here. I mean, 2 or 3 groups in some cases, okay, in addition to other stuff, but I wouldn't mess them because the performance is really bad. And I know the price is just 300, but even with this performance, I found it really expensive. So let's come to the zombie pirate gunnery mob, the bombers. And guess what? I like these guys. The missile damage is 24, what is quite good. The direct AP missile damage is 0, but we have an explosive armor piercing damage of 5. So overall, against low tier units, the damage output is quite good. 2 or 3 of these guys in your second or third row and constantly throwing their hand grenades on the front line, that damage will definitely add up, especially against low tier units, and I really like it. So we causing also flaming attacks over here with the hand grenades. Of course in melee combat these guys are complete garbage. They are not even, it's not even debatable, but the missile damage is quite good. But we have a general problem on nearly all missile infantry units of the Vampire Coast. The missile range is really small. Also on the zombie pirate gunnery mob, the missile range is just 90, and on these hand grenade guys the missile range is 55. So this is you have to be really close to your target, and this is a little problem. In most cases you have 1-2 shots and then you get engaged in fight. But as I said, on these bombers you can stand them in the second or third row and let them throw their hand grenades on front line, and I really like these guys. The price is 400 credits, so just 100 more than the zombie pirate gunnery mob, and in my opinion they are definitely worth their salt, and I really like them. So let's talk about the zombie pirate gunnery mob with hand cannons, and these guys have a missile damage of 28. So we have a higher missile damage and a higher missile range than the bombers. So we have plus 35 regarding the bombers and plus 4. The missile damage includes or 2% armor piercing missile damage, but therefore we have no explosion damage, splash damage. So the bombers causing splash damage, can disrupt formation and something like that. These guys causing no splash damage. The hand cannons are, yeah, you can say like shotguns. But I saw this on Turin's last video with the 5 worst Vampire Coast units, and I really can confirm that these guys are really bad. I don't know why. The missile damage is 28, and if we would have some splash damage over here, it would be much more effective. But there is no splash damage. We have just a few volleys of normal bullets, and yeah, that's it. You cannot even kill a group of Skaven slaves with spears in a good period of time. It's not possible, because every of this 90 models shoots just a normal volley of bullets without any splash damage, and this is very ineffective. So, and the price is much higher, so we have 550 credits. I would always say prefer the bombers before these hand cannon guys, because they are really ineffective and they are not cost efficient at all. So let's come to the zombie pirate gunnery mob with handguns, and these guys are probably the most cost efficient version or the most cost efficient unit on the missile infantry roster. Because these guys have a quite good range, so they have a shooting range of 145. This is very good. The missile damage overall is not the highest. We have just 14, but therefore we have an AP missile damage of 13. What is okay? It's quite good in fact for a unit for 550 credits. So overall we have a good shooting range in combination with a quite okay amount of AP damage, and we don't have to forget we have extra powder also available, so a quite good, cost efficient unit over here. And of course always preferable to the hand cannons for the same price, it's definitely clear. So there's also Regiment of Renown available, the Black Spot. These guys have quite decent melee combat stats for a zombie unit. So we have amount of melee attack of 18, melee defense 17, weapon strength of 27, what is not bad. So these guys are also able to fight a little bit in melee combat. And very interesting is the fact that these guys are anti-large. So we have an anti-large bonus of 13 and an amount of AP damage of 19 when it comes to the melee stats. This is quite good. And so they are really able to defend themselves from Chaos Warhounds or something like that. I'm not sure if the Chaos Warhounds 2 groups should shatter these guys anyway, but at least they are a little bit able to defend themselves. The missile damage is overall the same, so nothing special. But yeah, they have also a charge defense against large foes, was also quite interesting. But the price is 800 credits overall, and this is a lot of stuff. It's not so easy to say, but I would probably definitely recommend this unit in some cases if you have money left, because what you get with the melee combat stats is really good. Even if you compare the stats to the stats of the normal infantry units, for example the Zombie Pirate Deckhand Mob, the stats are quite the same, but a little bit more hit points has the Zombie Pirate Deckhand Mob. But when it comes to the AP damage or anti-large bonus, the Black Spot is much better. So for this reason, I would probably say it's worth to bring the Black Spot to the battlefield, even if the price is 800 credits. So let's talk about the deck gunners, and these guys are also declared as ammo-piercing missile, that causing ammo-piercing missile damage. We have an amount of 37, what is really good. These guys are really monstrous when it comes to the AP damage. The missile damage overall is 48, what is really good. The range is 245. This is a huge range, so they can shoot from a huge distance, and this is really good. We have a very slightly problems with the ammunition. The ammunition amount is quite low. Of course, in melee combat you can forget them completely. They are completely useless in melee combat. But besides from that, they're causing a tremendous amount of damage, especially against armored targets. The price is 700 credits, and if you just look on the stats, it would be okay. But from another perspective, if you look on the gameplay, it's the same like on Iron Drakes. It's nearly the same unit. Of course, the Iron Drakes have a much lesser range and they're causing fire attack. But generally, it's nearly the same gameplay. And here's the problem: it's very difficult to get them in the fight, to maneuver them in the correct way. They are always blocked and cannot shoot. They have just 24 models. They get sniped out very easy. They are complete garbage in melee combat. They are complete useless in this. And for this reason, it's too complicated in-game to really get the job done, that they can cause a tremendous amount of damage to your opponent. In most cases this won't happen, and for this reason I would leave them out. We mentioned is also they have an ability called Shield Breaker that will reduce the missile parry by 24 for 10 seconds if your opponent gets hit by these deck gunners over here. So there's also a Regiment of Renown available, the Shade Wrath Gunners. These guys are ethereal, and they have a physical resistance of 75%. They have better melee stats, but even though they are still quite useless, they're causing magical attacks when it comes to the melee combat, but also with their guns. The damage output is a little bit lesser, but therefore they have the discourage ability that will discourage your opponent by minus 16 leadership for 10 seconds. So in some cases it's additional effect and it's cool, but as I said, on the deck gunners in real in-game it's very complicated that they get their job done, so I would leave this out. It's too complicated. because they are also really slow. So we have just a speed of 23 on both sides, on the deck gunners and the shade wave gunners, and they are so slow. They cannot run away. They need years to flank anything. If you would like to flank on one side, to shoot on the front line from behind or something like this, it's completely, it takes years to do that, and for this reason, leave them out. There is a general problem when it comes to the missile infantry for itself. The problem is here we have all on each unit guns, except for the bombers, but the guns shooting straight. And the problem is it depends so much on the terrain if you can shoot or not. Every rock in the terrain blocks your units from shooting. And after that, if you run over the rock or your opponent's units, you have such a short period of time to get some volleys on your opponent, and this is a little a problem. You have always be aware that in the most cases you will shoot as much as is it possible, but in the most terrain will block your shooters in for some time, and this is every rock, every uneven terrain. It's horrific in some cases. So if you are lucky and the terrain is good, you can place several volleys on your opponent and you are fine. But on some maps it's really difficult to set one volley after another, and this is a massive problem, I would say. So it depends very much on the terrain. And for this reason, it's also very easy for units with bows and arrows to snipe your gunners out. So there are a lot of dark sides over here, but also a lot of positive ones. But even though, let's go on to the missile. Yeah, let's continue with the missile monsters. So let's talk about the missile monsters and beasts, and we are going to start with the deck droppers. And the deck droppers are a special unit, a Felbert with a zombie, carrying a zombie, and this zombie is also a ranged unit. So the missile damage over here is overall quite good. We have a missile damage of 38. The amount of AP damage is just 6. That's okay, but the problem is we have just 18 models, so the damage output overall is not the best. A positive point is that they can fire whilst moving, and for example, if we compare the melee stats of the normal Felberts to the deck droppers, we can see that the melee attack is massive increased, so we have plus 12, therefore nearly no melee defense, minus 22. So in emergency case they are able to fight in melee combat, but not in most cases. It's not the best way to use them. The price is just 450. In some cases, maybe to do some harass damage and interrupt artillery units, maybe okay. But as I said, the damage output, especially with the ranged weapons, is not the best. So I cannot say definitely I can't recommend, or I can recommend these guys. In some cases, the price is just 450 credits, and you have at least some mobility. Maybe in some cases to chase low tier cavalry units or something like that, it's maybe worth it. But I don't know. It depends. So let's talk about the bombers, and this is the same bomber unit like on the missile infantry, but of course we have much better stats when it comes to melee attack. For example, we have plus 18 melee attack, plus 50 melee defense. We have the range is quite short, it's not okay really, and the missile damage is also a little bit reduced. But even though I think the price is quite high, we have 600 credits, but the damage output with the bombs is okay. At least we have some splash damage, you don't have to forget that. We have explosive base damage of 19, and the explosive armor piercing damage is 6, what means that we have a splash damage, and this can at least interrupt enemy formations, for example on missile infantry units and stuff like that. So in some cases they can perform quite okay, even if the price is for the performance quite high, I would say, because the model count is also just 18 over here, and this is quite low. So now let's come to the handguns, and the handguns is also here the version like on the missile infantry, but also here everything increased except for the range. We have a little shorter range, but therefore we have a quite higher amount of missile damage. We have 41 overall and an amount of AP missile damage of 33, what is quite good, but also here just a small unit count and no splash damage whatsoever. That means the damage output is really low, and in this case these guys, the price is 700 credits, and in these guys I wouldn't spend money on these guys because, as I said, the damage output is really bad. But the melee stats are quite good. They are not bad, so they can also do some harass damage, for example, and stuff like that. Even if the melee defense is massive, much lower than the melee defense on the Felbert version. So for 700 credits I would leave these guys out completely. So there's also a regiment of renown available of the deck dropper bombers, the Salt Lord Scuttlers, and these guys have better melee stats but not significant. The most important point over here is that these guys have armor sundering, so they will reduce the armor of your opponent for 10 seconds by -30. But for 900 credits I would leave these guys out always. This is not worth the price. I mean, if the damage output would be much more or would be increased regarding the normal deck droppers with bombers, it would be debatable, but we have just +1 over here, so 1 damage more than on the normal bombers version, and this is not debatable, so leave them out completely. It's too much money. So let's come to the Rotting Prometheans gunnery mob. And what is really outstanding is that this unit is not, you're not playing it as a ranged unit, so there is no option, let me shoot or let me go in melee combat. You always use them as a melee combat unit, and the zombies on the back of these crabs over here starting to shoot automatically, and this is very nice. This is a very nice feature, that you go always in melee combat, and then the guys on the back over there will shoot on your opponents. Also, they are able to fire whilst moving, but is also quite good. The missile damage is 31. This is not really significant. So more important is the melee combat itself. So the weapon strength is 77 and the amount of AP damage is 55, what is quite a lot. The melee defense is nearly 50. The melee attack is 38, what is also quite good or quite okay, and they are very heavily armored. So these crabs over here have an amount of 120, and this is a lot of stuff. So they are really superior in melee combat, and as I said, forget all these missile damage, it is not that much. There are 2 zombies on the back and shooting from time to time. This is not really significant. They have a charge defense against large, what is quite nice. But overall we have a big problem, the price. We have a price of 1,350 credits, and this is a lot of stuff. And as I said, the damage output from these shooting zombies is not really a big deal. So in the most cases you will prefer to bring if you bring Prometheans to the battlefield, bring the Rotting Prometheans from the normal roster. You can deploy a group for 1,100 credits, and the only difference is that these guys will not shoot, and the HP is reduced about 150 or something like that. So you would always prefer to bring normal Rotting Prometheans, in my opinion. It's not worth to bring these guys over here just because of 2 shooting zombies. If this would be bombers, they are throwing bombs from the back of the crabs, maybe then, but with some shooting from 9 different entities, it's not worth to bring them. But we also don't have to forget the guys on the back are the hand cannons versions, or the worst missile infantry unit of the roster. So there's also a regiment of renown version available, the Lamprey's Revenge, and these guys have better melee stats, +7 melee attack, +15 melee defense, what's quite a lot then, and a better missile damage. So we have a missile damage overall of 40, but even though the AP missile damage is nearly 0, just 2, these guys have a charge defense against all, and they have regenerate. So a lot of stuff, and with all these stats they are then also better than the normal Rotting Prometheans. But even though the price is 1,500 credits, and they are still sitting some handgunners on the back, this is, as I said, the handgun version, hand cannon version, sorry, and for this reason it's not worth it. So in summary, we have some very low tier units with the deck droppers and stuff like that, doing some arrest damage, and then very expensive one with the Prometheans. So this is a very unique arm of service, but definitely not the best. So let's talk about the other monsters, and let's begin with the Falbats, and these are exactly the same Falbats like on the Vampire Count roster. And yeah, they are for doing some arrest damage, have at least some mobility, chasing out routing units. For all that purposes, the price is not really cheap with 350 credits, but in many matchups they really pay off, especially when it comes to interrupting missile infantry units. As I already said, chasing out some routing units, and especially against the Wood Elves, against all that stuff that constantly shoot on your front line. For this purpose, these guys can really cause also some little bit damage against missile infantry, but also to chase away some kite units, some harass units, some missile cavalry units and stuff like that. And for this purpose, these guys are really perfect and really worth the salt. I really love to play with Falbats. So let's talk about the Scurvy Dogs, and this is, yeah, not exactly but quite the same unit like Direwolves. The Direwolves have a little bit more melee defense and a little bit more charge bonus, but besides from that it is nearly the same unit. And these guys also are good for some mobility purposes, to chase away, to kill also missile infantry units, chase away kite units and stuff like that. And for this reasons, these guys are really good. Also in some cases do some rear charges in low tier infantry. And yeah, the price is 450 credits, and in my opinion really cost efficient. The price is 50 less than the normal Direwolves from the Vampire Counts, and for this reason I think this is quite decent. So let's talk about the Blooded Corpse, and this thing over here is a quite unique unit in a complete game, because this thing will explode. So we don't have to talk about melee stats or something like this. This thing will blow itself up and causing a tremendous amount of damage. You can say that once exploded, the other unit will annihilate probably completely, but we have a big problem over here. This thing has nearly no armor. We have just 1200 hit points, so it's very easy to focus out, to snipe out. But of course it's always the question if your opponent will notice that thing. But even though the price is quite high, so we have a price of 500. If the price would be 250, for example, it would be much more reasonable to bring it to the battlefield, but for 500 it's just for fun purposes, but not really competitive. So let's talk about the animated Hulks, and I noticed in Turin's last video that he counts the animated Hulk as one of the worst units, and I understand what he means. These guys don't have any armor, so just 20. Also the melee attack with 30 is very low, the melee defense is 20, this is incredible low. And for this points I really understand it, but I wouldn't say they are completely useless. We have a weapon strength of 110, what is quite nice. The amount of AP damage is 77, what is quite a lot of stuff. And for this reason they are in combination with your frontline low tier units. In some cases they can cause a good amount of AP damage. And we don't have to forget the price for these guys is just 750 credits. I know Terra is missing and some major weaknesses over here, but even though I think in some cases you can pick them, and yeah, I personally like them in fact. One of the reasons why the animated Hulks are not the most competitive pick are the Mongols. These guys have for 1000 credits, so 250 more, much better stats. For example, we have a melee attack of 8 plus 8, melee defense plus 4. Regarding the stats of the animated Hulks, the amount of armor is 40. Everything also not the best, but we have also here a huge damage output of 100. The IP damage of that is 70, and then in additional bonus versus infantry of 20. Quite a lot of stuff. Also very interesting is that these guys have stock and can get deployed in a vanguard position, and they're causing terror. The missile resistance is 30%, so we have a lot of stuff over here. They have the hunger that will replenish the hit points, and this is a very competitive pick for 1000 credits because you get a lot of stuff for your money. And but especially very important points is terror, the vanguard deployment in combination with stock. I mean, this think about the possibilities. You can deploy them in a vanguard position, sneak behind, and do some rear charges in the enemy front line after the units get engaged, and they're causing a huge amount of damage or huge trouble in the enemy ranks of infantry. And for this reason, these guys are really good and really cost efficient. Is a really cost efficient unit. So let's talk about the Prometheans. And if you say the animated hawks and the Morghuls don't have any armor, also the melee defense is low, they are damage dealer monsters, you can say, in a multiple entity group. These guys over here, the more rotting Prometheans, are more steady. They have more melee defense, plus 24, nearly 50 overall, and the amount of armor is supreme. We have an amount of 120. Therefore, other stats are a bit reduced. So we have the weapon strength is minus 23 regarding the Morghul's weapon strengths, overall 77. The amount of AP damage is then 55, still very good. They have a charge defense versus large, and yeah, nothing more to say about these guys. For 100 credits extra charge regarding the Morghuls, you can get a unit with 9 different models that are quite steady and not so easy to kill because they're very heavily armored and have a very good melee defense. They're really worth their salt. So there's also a regiment of renowned version of the Morghuls available, the Knights Terrors, and these guys have much more weapon strength, 120 overall, much more melee defense plus 10, much more melee attack plus 16, and also leadership increased a lot by 22. They have also stock, but besides from that, everything quite the same, except for one thing. They are going on rampage. That means they get out of control. This will not happen on a normal group of Morghuls, and this is of course a disadvantage. But even though the extra charge is just 200, so I would definitely say that they are worth their salt, and you can bring them to the battlefield because you get a much more better stats for 200 credits extra charge, even if they go on rampage after a time. So let's talk about the Necrophax Colossus. And I mean, what is this thing? Is this a ship? Is this a tank? Is this artillery? Is this everything together? This thing is really, really cool. And the damage output is also really cool. We have missile damage of 630. This is quite a lot of stuff. The AP missile damage is 137. We have a very good missile range of 330. And what is really cool is that this thing can fire whilst moving. So if you walk towards your enemy, this thing is starting to shoot. And also in melee combat, the weapon strength is 412 superior. The AP damage is 309, also really good in melee combat. Melee defense is 30, melee attack is 42, and the amount of armor is 75. So superior stats overall, nothing more to say about this. We have a very good ability called Abandoned Ship. So this will trigger if this thing is nearly dead. Then a lot of zombies will drop out of this ship over here and starting to fight. Quite nice ability for a last stand, and yeah, nothing more to say. The price is 1,800 credits. In the most cases, it's preferable to bring Count Noctilus on the Necrophax Colossus, because then the extra charge is 700. But if you need another one, it's worth the salt. It's a quite good anti-infantry monster, but also you can shoot also on large entities. But I think it's more designed to fight infantry units or in ranks of infantry, causing a good amount of trouble. So I love this monster. Very well done, CA. This is incredibly good over here. So is also a regiment of renown available, the Gallows Giant with the Torch of Bogenhafen, and that means he has he's a flamethrower, causing a devastating amount of damage. I mean, I'm not sure if this is correct, but the damage missile output is by 5,523. I don't know if this could be right, but of course this thing works only in close-up, so the missile range is just 110, so he has to stand very close to the target, to his target, and he causing of course flaming attacks, a devastating amount of missile AP damage, as I already mentioned, and he's also good in melee combat, so the weapon strength is 500, the AP armor piercing damage is 375, and he has, in addition to that, also a bonus versus infantry of 25, what is also quite interesting. So much more weapon strength overall regarding the Necrophax Colossus in melee combat. The melee defense is higher, plus 15, the melee attack is higher, plus 10, and he has an ability called Burnt that will reduce the leadership by -8 for 10 seconds if he hit his target. Also he has 10 more leadership, but besides from that, nothing special. Of course, he cannot fire whilst moving, he has to stand on the ground, but he has also the ability Abandoned Ship. But besides from that, nothing special. For 200 credits extra charge, you get a massive flamethrower, which is causing massive moral drops to enemy troops. So let's come to the absolute highlight over here, the Rotting Leviathan. And this massive monster over here is incredibly strong. We have a huge amount of armor. It's the same amount of armor like on the Ragnarok Spider, so we have 150, so very, very heavily armored, so also very difficult to kill. This is an anti-infantry monster, so very designed to fight infantry units. The melee attack is very good with 52, the melee defense with 42 is good. We have a weapon strength of 380, that is okay. It could be higher, but it's okay. The amount of AP damage therefore is 280, so superior stats overall. Of course, this thing causing terror and fear, and nothing special overall. It's declared as a defender because he has also a charge defense against all. So a very strong, a very good monster, and of course also a huge target like other big monsters. So you can snipe it out with artillery, with cannons, or with missile infantry. And it's also quite expensive. The price is 2,000 credits, but you can also pick this thing in combination with Celestial Daraphin, so you can sit here on this Rotting Leviathan for 1,400 credits extra charge. This is in most cases more decent because you can have then a spellcaster and a huge monster, but if you pick it as a single unit, the price is 2,000 credit, what is quite a lot. But not much more to talk about this thing over here, a massive anti-infantry monster, but also very expensive. So let's come to the Death Shriek Terrorgeist, and this is not the same Terrorgeist like on the Vampire Counts roster. The difference is that the Vampire Coast Terrorgeist has a anti-large bonus of 35, and the Death Shriek Terrorgeist from the Vampire Coast don't have any large bonus whatsoever. Therefore the weapon strength is increased. We have plus 40 overall, and also the melee attack by plus 12. The amount of AP damage is also a little bit higher. We have 325 on the Death Shriek Terrorgeist and just 295 on the Terrorgeist from the Vampire Counts. But overall the rest is the same. We have more AP damage, more weapon strength, but therefore no anti-large bonus. But if you need a Terrorgeist to fight against large entities, this thing is still quite good. As I mentioned in one of my battle casts, the most great or big monsters are also heavily armored, and this beast over here causing a quite good amount of AP damage. So even though there is no anti-large bonus, it's quite useful that the AP damage is that high, so it's still quite good to fight large entities. And you have at least some aerial threat, maybe in combination with some deck droppers, to have a good air force in some cases it's really good to spend 2000 credits on a Death Shriek Terrorgeist. As I mentioned, you can also sit Luther Harkin for 1300 credits on the same Death Shriek Terrorgeist. And this is a much cheaper combination. But if you need an additional one, you can spend 2000 credits, and in some cases it's worth to do this. So let's talk about the artillery, and let's begin with the mortars over here. And the mortars are quite similar to the Empire mortars. Just the missile damage is a little bit increased on the Empire mortars, but overall it's the same unit. The price is also nearly the same. The Empire mortars has a price of 700, and the Vampire Coast mortars, the price is 600. So, but overall it's quite the same. And we have also the same old problem. The accuracy is really bad. It's quite random, and for this reason it's not a competitive pick. But also we have just 3 models. It's not really much, and the damage output with 115 is the missile damage is also quite low. We have an explosive base damage of 60 as a splash damage, but it's quite good, but therefore the explosive armor piercing damage is just 16, and this is very low, and for this reason it's never a competitive pick. So let's come to the carronades, and the carronades are also quite similar to the Empire Great Cannon. The price is also quite similar. We have a price difference of 100 credits. The Empire Great Cannon has a price of 800, and the Vampire Coast carronades have a price of 700 credits. The missile damage is also here a little bit increased on the Great Cannon of the Empire, but overall it's the same unit, and I'm pretty sure also that the accuracy is nearly the same. I can't see this over here, but the accuracy of the carronades is also really superior. The missile damage is 213, and the AP missile damage is 352, and this is really superior. And this unit is declared as an anti-large unit even without any anti-large bonus whatsoever. This huge AP damage means this thing is designed to shoot on large entities, and for 700 credits this is a very competitive unit, a very important unit, and really worth to bring to the battlefield. One, or sometimes if it is necessary even 2 groups are really worth the salt. So let's come to the highlight over here, Queen Bess, the highlight in the artillery and the last unit in this faction guide over here. And I heard from several players that they think the Queen Bess is not a competitive pick, but I have to contradict. This thing is, in my opinion, a really competitive pick. The price is just, for example, just 600, and this is, in my opinion, not so much. If you think about the Sargoth of the Beastman, the price is also 600, and this thing has a massive damage output. So we have a missile damage of 262. But the AP missile damage is also 262, and we have a huge explosive armor piercing damage, the splashed armor piercing splash damage of 75. So the damage output is gigantic. The only problem is of course the low ammunition, so we have just 20 shots overall, then this thing is empty. But as I said in a former video, that the gunnery white can refill, so if you pick a gunnery white, he has an ability that is able to refill ammunition of artillery units, and in some cases it's worth to bring this combination, because Queen Bess is a really mighty cannon and very good, especially also for shooting on high tier units, high tier infantry units. Of course, this is an anti-infantry cannon, but also against low tier units. And if you shoot on low tier units, missile infantry units and stuff like that, they will rout almost immediately. But the high tier units, they take 2 or 3 shots and they will rout off, they get annihilated. And this is very good, especially to bring against factions like High Elves, which have very elite units but not the ability to snipe out enemy artillery very fast. And for this reason, against factions like the High Elves, this thing can really pay off. Also against the Beastmen or stuff like that, because the damage output is tremendous. And also I found the accuracy really good, even if the projectile is really long in the air. In my opinion, is the accuracy really good of this thing over here. So let's come to my suggestions for 3 different competitive builds, and yeah, be aware, everything is quite new, so I can't tell you. These are just some suggestions for the beginning, and first of all I will show you a build against low tier factions, or against factions with a lot of low tier units like the Skaven, or like also the Beastmen or Greenskins and stuff like that. And in order not to get outnumbered, it's of course a heavy infantry build over here, not to get flanked very hard. So let's take a closer look on my build over here, and I have a huge front line of zombie parent deckhead mobs with pole arms. And as I said in my faction guide, I always prefer these guys before the normal version, because the difference is not really much, but these guys have at least an anti-infantry bonus, and they cause anti-large bonus, sorry, and they're causing a good amount of AP damage. The AP damage is 19. Very, very good over here. And I have 5 of these guys in my front line. Directly behind my front line I have some slice and dice stuff over here. This depth guard, this is the damage dealer unit, of course, and yeah, especially for low tier factions or low tier units with they're not so heavily armored, very low on armor, these guys annihilate everything, slice and dice through all ranks. And I have 3 groups over here. Then I brought a Mogul Haunter, this monster, this horrific thing over here, causing a huge amount of damage, a huge amount of AP damage, and also at least a bonus versus infantry of 25. But even though you can also use him to fight, in some cases, in emergency cases, to fight other large entities, it's not designed for that, but he is able to do that, causing also a very good amount of AP damage. In my last line I brought 2 groups of zombie parent gunnery mob with bombers. These guys will constantly throw their bombs on the front line and disrupt enemy formations, and in the most cases some low tier units will rout off almost immediately because they are on the fire, their leadership will drop, and for this case I brought 2 of these bombers. Then I brought Celestia Derafin, and I think on the Leviathan this is quite good, especially against heavy infantry builds. But of course it depends. If you play against the Skaven, you're probably not bringing this combination over here, because against warp lightning cannons and stuff like that, this is very dangerous. But also here, very short, you can Fog of the Damp is very good against a lot of low tier units, because the leadership will drop, the melee attack will drop, and that will bring in some cases, or in most cases, a good amount of units to rout, also especially the low tier units, because of the leadership drop and the melee attack drop. So this is very good for low tier units over here. Vanguard's Revenge, nothing to explain, big monster ship coming and destroys everything. Then the Denizens of the Deep, summoning a unit of rotting Prometheans, very good, and Tide Call. So nothing special with that. Typical spells, very good spells, and also very good especially for fighting huge amounts of enemy infantry groups. But as I said, of course always on the monster is not the best thing over here. It depends against which faction you are going to face up. Then at least to have some mobility, 2 groups of Felbats to snipe out or to kill enemy missile infantry units or artillery, of chasing out routing units. And last but not least, of course, I will deploy these guys in the vanguard position, the Morghuls. The Morghuls are horrific, causing a terror, fear, a huge amount of damage, and a bonus versus infantry, and a good amount of AP damage. The price is 1000, and you can deploy them in a vanguard position, and they have stalk. And this is a horror, of course, for all infantry units, but especially, of course, also against the armored units, but also against low tier units. They will rout off, they terror out almost immediately if these guys will charge in their back. And as I said, deploy them always in a vanguard position. They have stalk, they are hidden, and then charge in the back, and the spot will break on the front line almost immediately. So that was everything from this build. I think this is quite decent against low tier units or heavy infantry builds. heavy infantry builds that are not so heavily armored. Of course, against the heavy infantry build of Chaos, this is not the perfect solution, but against Skaven or stuff like that, beside from this huge monster over here, as I said, be aware of warp lightning cannons. But besides from that, against Skaven, Greenskin and Beastmen, I think this is a quite good build. Come to the next build, and this is a heavy build against AP, massively armored units, Chaos, Dark Elves and stuff like that. It depends a little bit against which faction, but this is massive crushing power. So we have also here 4 groups of zombie pirate Darkhat mobs. At least, as I said, they have an amount of AP damage of 19 and so a small charge anti-large bonus. So we have a anti-large bonus of 13, always good. Then I brought 3 of these sirens. These ladies have good amount of AP damage, or at least a quite decent amount, and the price is also quite decent for 850 credits. So I brought 3 of these directly behind my front line. And then in addition 3 groups of Death Guard with pole arms. And these guys, of course, also AP damage unit, causing a good amount of AP damage. And anti-large, you can also say this build is created against large units. And here is a point over here, you can play it with the Necrosex Colossus, but you can also take 2 cannons. Probably the cannon version is better if you're going to face up against a lot of large entities. But the Necrofax is probably better against a heavy infantry, heavy armored infantry build. Then in my last line, I have also the zombie pirate gunnery mob with handguns, cause these guys causing armor-piercing missile damage. 2 groups over here, and then I brought Aranessa Soulspite. And as I said in the faction guide, she's a really anti-large monster, you can say. Here we have Kraken Span that will increase the melee attack by 5 and the bonus versus large by 8 constantly. And I brought her with Spearfisher's Net to net, or to hold tight large entities and to kill them. So as I said, over here the Necrofax is really debatable. You can also bring 2 groups of cannons and something else, maybe a spellcaster. Of course, this is missing over here. This is just massive crushing power. There's not a spellcaster, nothing. This is massively crushing power, and with a mobile artillery unit. But you can also play it with a spellcaster, for example, a Law of Death, and at least 2 cannons, for example. This is also, in my opinion, also a quite decent solution for this type of build over here. So here's another option, another solution for this type of build. You can also play it like this. I brought 3 groups of zombie pirate Decan with pole arms in my front line, Mongol Hunter, 3 groups of sirens again, and in the last line Death Guards with pole arms. And then I brought Count Noctilus with several spells on the Necrosex Colossus, Invocation of Nehek, Knock of Mystifying Miasma, Pit of Shades, the Withering, quite good against armored targets, of course, armored infantry units, minus 30 armor and minus 8 leadership, and Drowned Dead, but you can also of course leave something out over here, it depends. And then massive firepower over here, 2 carronades and 1 additional group to protect these carronades over here. And I'm pretty sure with 3 massive artillery units you are the king if it comes to firepower over here, and also you have a good amount of crushing power for heavy infantry stuff, and I think this is also a very good solution over here. So last but not least, a round build, you can say. So a build with a lot of with a huge quantity of units in it, massive infantry build, you can say. So we have 6 groups of zombie pirate Darkhat mobs over here. Directly behind that I brought 2 groups of Depth Guard. One is here and one on the right side. In the middle I brought a unit of Depth Guard with pole arms to compete against, at least against large entities. And then some rotting Prometheans over here. For mobility purposes, I brought deck droppers. They can throw their bombs on the front line or chase off some routing units if they run out of ammunition, and a normal group of Felbats. And on each side, of course, you probably deploy them in a vanguard position, 2 groups of Mongols. And also here they are hidden. You can deploy them in a vanguard position and chase or attack from behind, but you can also let them on the flanks and flank on the right and on the left flank, because they stay hidden for a very long time. And if the units get engaged in this minute, you can also flank your opponent over there and with the Mongols. But I think, yeah, this is our round build, nothing special, but yeah, just a round build, and cannot say exactly against what. We have from everything stuff here. We have some AP damage with these guys, with the Mongols, with the Death Guard, with pole arms. We have some anti-large stuff. We have some damage dealers. We have at least a little bit mobility. We have also some crushing monsters with the rotting Prometheans. And we have the Vampire Fleet Admiral, and I forgot this over here. I brought him on foot. He's also anti-large. I brought him with the Law of Deep, Tide Call, Denizens of the Deep, Vanguard's Revenge, and Fog of the Damned. So, yeah. So that was everything from the competitive build section. Please let me know what you think. And yeah, let's do a summary. So summing all together, the Vampire Coast are a really fantastic faction. It feels good to play with them. They're looking good. It's a cool idea to have some zombie pirates and stuff like that, like Pirates of the Caribbean. I love the style, and I think they are fitting quite well in this complete Warhammer world. But besides from that, I have to say they are not, in my opinion, not the best faction. They are definitely not a low tier faction, but they are also not a high tier faction. I would put them in the lower segment of the tier 2 factions, so in the mid-range area, but they are on the lower segment. Because they are definitely not the best. They have some minor weaknesses. All these low tier units, it's very hard to play this faction over here, because you have to create a meat shield and protect your important units, and this is very difficult for in a gameplay, and especially very difficult for a newcomer. And so it's not so easy with, as I said, all these low tier units, and also the missile infantry. We have good variation, but it's not the best. You have them, you have to play them in a really correct way, in a good way, to have the best output, damage output, and so on. So it's not so easy to just spam missile infantry units and let them shoot and you are going to win. It's not that easy, and in this case it's quite difficult. So I would definitely say they have a huge potential. So we have a very good artillery, we have some good anti-infantry monsters, but as I said, also they have no anti-large monster and stuff like that. But even though with the right build, in the right combination, I'm pretty sure these guys will perform very good against a lot of factions. I made several tests against all factions, so I think this is a quite decent faction, but really not good for playing for newcomers. So I would not recommend to play it for newcomers on ladder or something like that, because as I already said, it's quite difficult. But anyway, I thank you for tuning in. I know this is a lot of stuff over here, but as you always notice, I make it always quite extensive and complete, and some of my faction guides don't have many views, others have very good views. Overall, I think they are quite many viewer like it, and I'm always happy if you like it. So please let me know, give me a thumb up, let me know what you think in the comments, let me know what you like or what you don't like. And yeah, see you on my next faction guide. Have a nice evening and stay well and healthy, brothers. Peace out.